I see a quorum. Honourable members of the committee, I must inform the members that the clerk of the committee can only receive motions for the election of the chair. I may not receive other types of motions, nor entertain points of order, nor participate in any debate. We may now proceed to the election of the chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, the chair must be a member of the government party. I'm ready to receive motions for the chair. I see Mr. McKinnon.
Yes, I nominate the Honourable Kirsty Duncan.
Mr. McKinnon, it is moved by Mr. McKinnon that the Honourable Kirsty Duncan be elected as chair of the committee. Are there other nominations? Okay, seeing none, I declare Ms. Duncan duly elected chair of the committee.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Can you hear me okay? Okay. First of all, merci beaucoup, chers collègues. Merci pour...
First off, thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you for the trust that you have in me, and I will work hard to answer your needs.
Let me just begin by saying congratulations to those who are re-elected, and welcome, a special welcome to those who are newly elected to the Hill. And just before we go to the vice chair elections, I'd like to say this is an historic moment. You are the inaugural members of the Science and Research Standing Committee. And congratulations. Thank you for the interest. And very briefly, I put forward a motion last Parliament to form a Science and Research Committee and to give permanence and a seat at the table in Ottawa. And it was really exciting. We had all-party support for that. And I think we have a real opportunity to shine a light on science and research. These are fundamental building blocks of our country. And I think we can study the opportunities, explore the opportunities and the challenges. So, colleagues, our next point of business is to elect two vice chairs. And if I could pass this to our clerk, please.
Thank you. Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, the first vice chair must be a member of the official opposition. I'm now prepared to receive motions for the first vice chair. I see Mr. Lake, sir.
I nominate Corey Tucker.
It is moved by Mr. Lake that Mr. Tucker be elected as first vice chair of the committee. Are there other motions? Seeing none, I declare Mr. Tucker duly elected as the committee's first vice chair. Pursuant to Standing Order 1062, the second vice chair must be a member of an opposition party other than the official opposition. I'm now prepared to receive motions for the second vice chair. Yes, Ms. Metlej-Diab.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Thank you. I would like to nominate Mr. Maxime Blanchet-Jonca. If he accepts. It is an honor to accept. Thank you. Ms. Diab moves that Monsieur Jonca be elected as second vice chair. Are there any other motions? Je ne vois aucune autre motion. Je déclare Monsieur Blanchet-Jonca dûment élu second vice-président du comité.
Vice-président.
Sorry, Mr. Clerk. Point of order.
Monsieur Lauzon?
Mr. Lauzon?
Sure that the clerk checked the raise hand on the computer. I had my raise hand to propose, and he didn't see me, so we have somebody else in the room.
I didn't see that. Je présente mes excuses, je n'ai pas vu votre...
Apologies, I did not see your raised hand.
Very important. But j'étais supposé
I was supposed to nominate Mr. Blanchet-Jonca. Everything has been resolved now with his election. I really apologize. Thank you.
May I congratulate our new vice chairs? Can I go on? Yes. Okay. Colleagues, our next point of business is to go through a set of routine motions committees customarily adopt as they start their work. And I'll hand this over to Mr. McKinnon to read the first motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first routine motion concerns analyst services. I move that the committee retain as needed and at the discretion of the chair the services of one or more analysts from the Library of Parliament to assist it in its work.
Colleagues, the motion is before you. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, you've approved the motion. Can we go to the second motion, Mr. McKinnon?
Actually, we need to vote on the motion first.
Yes. Sorry,
Details.
this is all new, folks. This is all new. Yes, thank you. Is the motion approved, or would you like a vote?
So we didn't actually vote on it, but I think if you ask for unanimous consent, you will find it.
Do we have unanimous consent for the motion? Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. McKinnon. And can we invite the analysts to the front, please? And I think we should hear from both the clerk and the analysts briefly before we go to the second motion. Welcome. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Dear committee members, my name is Tai Nguyen. I've been analyst on the Hill since 2012, mostly working with the House Fisheries Committee, but also supporting at times the Senate Committee too. So I'm looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. We thank you for the work. To our clerk. Clerk, would you like to introduce yourself while we're here to the committee, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Leif Aune. It's a pleasure for me to be the clerk of your committee. I've been a procedural clerk since 2005 and have served some of you on various committees in the past, and looking forward to working with you this session. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much to you both. We'll thank you in advance for the work you'll do. And I'd like to also say thank you to the interpreters and to all the technology folks and everyone who is supporting this committee. So we've had unanimous consent for the first motion. Mr. McKinnon, can we go back to you, please?
Point of order, Madam Chair. Can we maybe read all of the motions together as one and then just vote on them together? Would there be consent for that?
Thank you, Mr. Lake, for suggesting that. Dear colleagues, is there unanimous consent to do that? Seeing unanimous consent?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Before I continue, I expect you've all had a copy of these. And I just note there's a typo on the heading. It says 43rd Parliament, second session. It's incorrect. So carrying on with the routine motions. The motion on the subcommittee on agenda and procedure. I move that the Subcommittee on Agenda and Procedure be established and be composed of, it doesn't say here, what should that be, 5 members? Right, okay, 5 members. The chair, 1 member from each recognized party, and that the subcommittee work in a spirit of collaboration. Motion on meeting without a quorum. I move that the chair be authorized to hold meetings, to receive evidence, and to have that evidence published when a quorum is not present, providing that at least 4 members are present, including 2 members of the opposition parties and 2 members of the government party, but when traveling outside the parliamentary precinct, that the meeting begin after 15 minutes, regardless of members present. Motion for opening remarks and questioning of witnesses. I move that witnesses be given 5 minutes for their opening statement, that whenever possible, witnesses provide the committee with their opening statement 72 hours in advance, and that at the discretion of the chair, during the questioning of witnesses, there be allocated 6 minutes for the first questioner of each party, as follows for the first round: Conservative Party, Liberal Party, Bloc Québécois, New Democratic Party. For the second and subsequent rounds, the order and time for questioning be as follows: Conservative Party, 5 minutes, Liberal Party, 5 minutes, Bloc Québécois, 2.5 minutes, New Democratic Party, 2.5 minutes, Conservative Party, 5 minutes, Liberal Party, 5 minutes. Document distribution. I move that only the clerk of the committee be authorized to distribute documents to members of the committee, provided the documents are in both official languages and that the witnesses be advised accordingly. Working meals. I move that the clerk of the committee, at the discretion of the chair, be authorized to make the necessary arrangements to provide working meals for the committee and its subcommittees. Travel, accommodation, and living expenses. I move that, if requested, reasonable travel, accommodations, and living expenses be reimbursed to witnesses not exceeding 2 representatives per organization, and that, in exceptional circumstances, payment for more representatives be made at the discretion of the chair. Access to in-camera meetings. I move that, unless otherwise ordered, each committee member be allowed to be accompanied by 1 staff member at in-camera meetings, and that 1 additional person from each House officer's office be allowed to be present. Transcripts of in-camera meetings. I move that 1 copy of the transcript of each in-camera meeting be kept in the committee clerk's office for consultation by members of the committee or by their staff, and that the analysts assigned to the committee also have access to the in-camera transcripts. Notices of motion. I move that a 48-hour notice, interpreted as 2 nights, be required for any substantive motion to be moved in committee, unless the substantive motion relates directly to business then under consideration, provided that A, the notice be filed with the clerk of the committee no later than 4 p.m. from Monday to Friday, B, the motion be distributed to members and the offices of the whips of each recognized party in both official languages by the clerk on the same day the said notice was transmitted, if it was received no later than the deadline hour. C, notices received after the deadline hour or on non-business days be deemed to have been received during the next business day, and that when the committee is holding meetings outside the parliamentary precinct, no substantive motions may be moved. Orders of reference from the House respecting bills. I move that in relation to orders of reference from the House respecting bills, A, the clerk of the committee shall, upon the committee receiving such an order of reference, write to each member who is not a member of a caucus represented on the committee to invite those members to file with the clerk of the committee in both official languages any amendments to the bill, which is the subject of said order, which they would suggest that the committee consider. B, suggested amendments filed pursuant to paragraph A at least 48 hours prior to the start of clause-by-clause consideration of the bill to which the amendments relate shall be deemed to be proposed during the said consideration, provided that the committee may, by motion, vary this deadline in respect of a given bill, and C, during the clause-by-clause consideration of a bill, the chair shall allow a member who filed suggested amendments pursuant to paragraph A an opportunity to make brief representations in support of them. Motion regarding technical tests for witnesses. I move that the clerk inform each witness who is to appear before the committee that the House Administration Support Team must conduct technical tests to check the connectivity and the equipment used to ensure the best possible sound quality, and that the chair advise the committee at the start of each meeting of any witness who did not perform the required technical tests. And lastly, linguistic review. That I move that all documents submitted for committee business that do not come from a federal department members' offices or that have not been translated by the Translation Bureau be sent for prior linguistic review by the Translation Bureau before being distributed to members. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Is there any discussion on any of the motions? Seeing no discussion, can we put this to a vote? Is there unanimous consent? Thank you, colleagues. Mr. McKinnon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering if the clerk could clarify the masking policy for us in the room here.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Yes. Thank you, colleagues. I will give you the masking policy. So, welcome to the first meeting of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Science and Research. The Board of Internal Economy requires that committees adhere to the following health protocols. Maintain a physical distance of at least 2 meters from others. Wear a non-medical mask unless seated, and properly wear a mask at all times, including when seated. Maintain proper hand hygiene by using the hand sanitizer provided in the committee room, and regularly wash your hands well with soap. As the chair, I will enforce these measures, and I thank you for your cooperation. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. And as you know, interpretation services are available for this meeting. You may speak in the official language of your choice. At the bottom of your screen, you may choose to hear floor audio or in English or in French. The raise hand features is on the main toolbar should you wish to speak. A reminder that all remarks should be addressed to the chair. When you are not speaking, your microphone should be muted. The committee clerk and I will maintain a speaking list for all members. Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Dear colleagues, I believe there's unanimous agreement for all the motions, yes? Yes. And they're passed. Terrific. We have started this committee. Many congratulations to you all. We're up and running. And would you like, thank you very much. We are now officially constituted. We have some time left if you want to discuss, and I will open it up to all of you. Mr. McKinnon.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on your election here. No election signs needed, apparently. I think that now that we have some time available, it'd be nice to kind of go around the room and find out what the expectations are for this committee going forward. I know for my own self, I would love us to be able to investigate the state of the art in different areas of science, such as fusion technology, quantum computing, stem cell technology, and it goes on and on. So also it'd be good to be able to get a survey of kind of where we, where we need to put our scientific expertise in this country, so that eventually we can make some recommendations to the Parliament on how to proceed. So that would be my input at this point.
Thank you so much, Mr. McKinnon. I believe we next have Mr. Lauzon. Mr.
Oui,
Lauzon.
merci beaucoup,
Yes, thank you very much.
Madam Chair. I think, je vais parler en français.
I'll speak French. Well, you know, my point of view for this committee is that first and foremost, we are extraordinarily lucky to be a part of this committee. This committee on research and development of technology. My vision is that we could increase access for rural regions. Let me explain. Technology, research, development with regards to communications, 5G, and even telecommunications. Anything that has to do with smart transportation, electrification. And the research on green hydrogen gases for industry. I think that I will work hard on this committee. I want to connect every element of our work to rural regions. I want them to be able to take advantage of our discussions, and I will support all recommendations that will advance robotics also. Electrification of factories, cogeneration plants. This is an area that I've worked in, and I hope that we can move our studies forward. Thank you.
Lauzon, and I see Ms. Diab has her hand up.
Unless there's someone else, is there? Sure, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
I
I thought you were going to put your hands up,
Okay,
Mr.
well,
Cannings.
No, go ahead.
No, but
Listen.
I'll put
no.
my hand up and I'll be
Okay, so,
after Ms. Diab.
No, no,
okay,
go
Ms.
ahead.
Diab and then Mr. Cannings?
Yeah, he can go ahead. I
Okay,
don't mind.
Mr. Cannings.
Sorry, I was just confused about the term "go around the table." I guess, you know, I have a background in science, so I'm excited to be here, and I think we should be aware that this is the Science and Research Committee. It would be fun to go off in all directions. I've formerly sat for the last 6 years on natural resources, so we did a lot of studies around energy and things like that. I think I would like us to concentrate more on, you know, fundamental and applied sciences and how Canada can excel in those areas. I think it would be great to start off with a broad study to teach us all about where Canada does well. You know, there's areas like fusion technology, like hydrogen, where we are world leaders, and I think, you know, we could have a study that would look at those successes, but also look at the challenges where science could use some help from this government. And, you know, so I think I would like to start off with a broader study like that. I know when I sat on natural resources, starting in 2015, we started out with a big study on everything. You know, it was like oil and gas and mining and forestry and nuclear. And when we first started this, I thought, this is crazy. You know, we should be studying more focused things. But after it was done, I thought, wow, that was so important for me, and I think for everybody on the committee, to really get a grounding. And I think we're in a brand new committee. I think it would be really helpful for us and our duty to start off with a broader study like that can look at where Canada is doing well, how we can move that forward, but also see where science and research needs some help in Canada, where the challenges are. So that's, I guess, what I would say.
Thank you for your expertise, Mr. Cannings, and for sharing your experience. I will put this to the committee. Are we going to Ms. Diab, or are you going to go around the table?
You're the boss.
Well, I would want to make sure that you all feel heard. Around the table? Okay, Ms. Diab, we're going to go to you, and then we will go to Monsieur Maxime Blanchet.
Listen, merci beaucoup. Listen, je suis très fière.
I am very proud to be here and to sit on this historic committee.
In 67, I guess, to have this committee, so it's okay. I don't mind waiting a few more minutes for my turn. As I said, I'm excited to be here. I'm very much looking forward to having constructive, collaborative discussions in this committee, because I really do think we need to shine the light on our strong research sector, and we need to help tell the story in our own communities, in our own backyards, in our own provinces, but also to the media and to to everybody, of the hard-working scientists and research that is going on across the country that most people have no idea. And I'll tell you, I was involved in provincial politics before coming to this table. And I was a cabinet minister for 8 years in Nova Scotia, but part of the stint was advanced education and labor, and that was just before coming here, as well as immigration and so on. But one example I'll give you is I brought the brain repair center that is at Dalhousie University to meet my deputy minister and some of my higher education staff, and the research that is going on at that facility is recognized internationally. Yet the unfortunate part is most people don't know what's happening in the country, and they have no time, nor do they have any skills to even promote it, communicate it, let people know what's happening. It just sort of made me, my heart was just, I couldn't believe it, but it's true. I have 2 of my 4 children are PhD. One is a neuropharmacologist, he's a scientist, and my daughter is a chemical engineer. And through their lens, I have seen the enormous, the enormous work that goes on in these sectors, and obviously there's so many sectors, and just the enormous talent that is out there from the youth. It's not something I experienced in my when I was their age, but it is also a story that most people have no idea. And so I would hope that this committee can shine a light on the good things that is happening across our regions in this country, and that would be my motivation for being here in this committee. And again, I'm very much open, even in Mount St. Vincent University is a university in my own riding, doing extremely important things in the early childhood, in the early learning education, in the aging, like it's just, there's enormous stuff. And so that would be sort of what I think if we can collaborate on and come up with how do we sort of build on that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Diab. What I'm excited about, I can hear your excitement and passion for this, so I thank you. Ms. Bernard, would you like to give thoughts?
Oh, me? Oh, are we going?
Okay, no, I'm not seeing any. Sorry, folks. I really am not getting any list here at all.
You mean for the gallery view?
Yeah, I can't.
Well, only Mr. Lozon is.
Okay, okay.
I don't see his hand
Okay. Sorry, Monsieur Blanchet-Joncar.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to congratulate you for your election and also my colleagues. It's an honor for me to witness the creation of this new Committee of Research and Technology. I don't know if we were late to the party. We needed a pandemic to give us the idea to create this kind of committee. Some of my colleagues said that they would like us to understand the situation, but I think we have this kind of research. The Nader report, we have had many recommendations since 2017. We need massive investments in fundamental research. Canada is the only G7 country that has reduced investments in research and development in 2019, the only G7 country that did not produce a COVID-19 vaccine, and the only G7 country that participated in COVAX, that received vaccines that were meant for poorer countries. So, Madam Chair, I think we have a lot of work to do. I remain optimistic, but I think we already have a good idea of the situation. So all we need is a little bit of will and some solutions to fix the problems that have already been identified in recent years. I think that I've named a few undeniable facts. Yes, Canada, specifically Quebec, has a lot of expertise, does a lot of scientific research internationally, but there's still that. We need to act urgently, especially considering the pandemic that we're in the middle of. And I think we cannot delay, and we have to focus on the critical situation. I've met with researchers in the scientific fields, and they said that they are denied development research because they don't have the appropriate funding. So yes, the government has contributed and invested significantly, but it was still not enough to fill the gap that has been dug in recent years. And I have to say that this is something that concerns me personally, but it also concerns many people that I was able to speak with. Obviously, these people are in the science and research field. Another subject, Madam Chair, that concerns me, and this is also fact-based, and these are research criteria that are set by the government for receiving funding for research chairs. Madam Chair, I will table a motion on this subject soon. So there are criteria about identity, diversity, inclusion that are compulsory now for research chairs. And unfortunately, Madam Chair, there are competent scientists that should have received funding and were not able to get funding, not because they were not competent, but because they did not meet these restrictive criteria that are preventing some scientists from getting funding. There are competent and talented scientists that are being left behind. So I think we need to study the effects of these criteria on development, research, science, discoveries. So I would say that these are the subjects that I'm interested in. I've mentioned these criteria. And then, you know, the heart of the matter is also money. So we will have to assess whether funding currently is fair, considering the talent and potential that exists here in Canada. So these are the topics of interest for me and of concern for me. And I hope that we will be able to start work very soon on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Janka. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this? Mr. Lake.
Are we allowed to take off our mask when we're speaking? Like in committee?
You can.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple thoughts to add. You know, it's the first time that we've sat as a committee, in my experience, and I've been around for a long time here, committees, the regular committees get bogged down oftentimes in other things and don't have enough time to do substantive studies based on evidence. And if anything, if we've learned anything over the last couple of years, it's that we're in a world where quote-unquote information is everywhere, and there's a lack of clarity around, you know, what information is actually evidence-based and what isn't. And we have an opportunity to shine a light on that. And I think if you take a look at the last couple of years, the sad thing is that our committees haven't been functioning for much of the last couple of years. If you take a look at this last stretch, by the time we sit meaningfully as a committee, it'll have been 8 months since most committees actually sat in the middle of a global pandemic. Our parliament was shut down, and then we went to an election. And then delayed coming back, and we hit the Christmas break, and it'll be from June to February before we actually sit to study things. We have an opportunity as a committee to take a look at certainly broad-based issues, and I think that there is going to be an importance to studying those things, but I also think that we've got to take a look at the issues that are front and center in our country at any given moment and aren't getting the spotlight shone on them because they're in the health ministry, for example, there are many competing issues for the health committee's time. We have the opportunity, because we probably won't be as busy necessarily with legislation as maybe other committees are. We have the opportunity to take those big issues and give a really good hard look at them as a committee. So sort of pick the biggest issues of the day as they come forward. So I think, one thing that we probably want to be careful about is necessarily, going after issues that might be important to each and every one of us individually, or not each of us, but one of us individually at committee in our own world, in our own constituency. We might want to take a look, in the general interest of Canadians at putting a spotlight on the issues that affect, our society broadly and are, under-researched, I guess, so to speak. Because I would say that, again, we can use the one that's so obvious right in front of us, the COVID response. And I would say one of the biggest challenges we've had in the country, we all just went through an election campaign where we were knocking on doors, is confusion. Confusion, lack of clarity around what the evidence shows. I think we have an opportunity as a committee to tackle that and to pursue a conversation around that if that's where we decide to go as a committee, have some of the top experts in the world, many of whom are working right here in Canada, have conversations. Some of those experts may not agree with each other 100%, and we have the opportunity to bring them to the table together and have that discussion and ask questions as a committee. And if we take our responsibility seriously as a committee, we can together do great things for our country. And so really looking forward to the opportunity to do that. The last thing I would just say is that, our researchers, if I've learned anything, and I'm not a researcher myself, but I've been around for a long time and I've worked with a lot of world-class researchers, particularly, as you would know, Kirsty, on the autism file, some of the top autism researchers in the country. Those researchers don't want to see us necessarily just arguing about money in the House of Commons. They want to see their research actually being used for meaningful action on behalf of the Canadians that they're working with and the communities they're working with. So we have an opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Lake. Thank you for recognizing the contributions and that we have such an opportunity in this committee. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to weigh in? Mr. Tucker.
Yes, just briefly here. And thank you, Mike, for those I think, astute comments about what we could be looking at as a committee. And I think as long as, and I think there might be even a hope that this committee, and maybe it's naiveness, that it wouldn't become a partisan committee. Facts are kind of facts, and they don't care what your political leanings are. And I think that there's a great potential here to do some really important work for the people of our great country. And that's all of the comments I'll share today.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker, as always. Is there anyone else who would like to weigh in? Ms. Bradford.
Yes, thank you, and congratulations, Madam Chair, on your election as chair of this committee. And it's such an honor to serve on this inaugural committee of a very special committee. And I'm very pleased to be able to serve with such esteemed members from all parties. And I think we can work and accomplish a lot together. And I'm looking forward to what we can do. Just a little bit of background so that you, because I am new and where I come from. So I represent Kitchener South Hespeler, which is in the region of Waterloo. So it's commonly referred to as the western end of the innovation corridor, which is anchored by Toronto on the other end. So we have a lot of research capability in Waterloo. Probably many of you are familiar with the University of Waterloo. So I'll impinge a bit on Lloyd Longfield's area as well from Guelph. So in an area of about 600,000 people, we have 3 esteemed universities: University of Guelph, which is renowned for research in agriculture and food, and University of Waterloo, which everyone thinks of for tech and math. It's certainly well renowned for that, but also a lot of expertise in robotics. I toured the university with the president fairly recently. Within the last month, we have a new president, and they have a lot of research there. Robotics, I see a lot of opportunity there for in the medical field. We all know that we have severe shortages of healthcare workers, and I think there's a lot of opportunity. They have very friendly robots now that aren't in cages anymore in manufacturing plants that can actually deliver a lot of healthcare services, and that might be something that we have an opportunity in. Also, sustainable aviation, they're really looking at that. A country as large as Canada, we do have to fly around. Many of us do to even get to our jobs here in Ottawa. But we need to make aviation more sustainable and environmentally friendly. So I was happy to see that there's research going on in that area. There's a Perimeter Institute, the Quantum Institute. So we might want to do a road trip at some of the various universities. I know Chad has McMaster, and there's University of Alberta and Calgary. To see what everyone is doing. I agree with what Mr. Canning said earlier on. I think, we need to do an overview perhaps at some point to see what the strengths of Canadian research are and what the gaps are and where we need to maybe pick up the pace and what the opportunities are. So that's all I say now. I've rambled too much, but I'm very excited about the work ahead of us and being part of this group and seeing what we can accomplish together.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bradford. Thank you for sharing a bit about your background and where you come from. Is there anyone who has not spoken that would like to speak? Okay. Colleagues, is there anything you'd like to bring forward? We have about 45 minutes left.
Motion to adjourn. Maybe, and we'll get into the topics and study in the subcommittee. I would propose that would be, I think, beneficial versus discussing any motions from on the floor today.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. I'll bring that to the group. There is a motion to adjourn, and do we have to? Mr. Tucker, can I just clarify, is the motion to adjourn? Thank you. Colleagues, there's a motion to adjourn. Do you want to discuss, or yes, Monsieur Blanc? It's not debatable, that's right. Sorry, folks, it takes a while to get back into the swing of things. Are we good then? Okay, dear colleagues, I will wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, and my best...
Point of order. We actually need to vote on it.
Madame la Présidente, j'aimerais juste intervenir avant d'adopter la...
Madam Chair, before we adopt the motion to adjourn, what I would like to submit to my colleagues, I think it would be interesting to have a briefing. No, this...
Bah, pas de problème.
Okay, no problem.
I'll come back to you. Is there unanimous consent?
Non. Non.
No.
Mr. Tucker has put forth a motion to adjourn. Would we like a show of hands of who agrees to this? Okay, motion adjourned. And who votes against, please? Thank you. And we're done. I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I look forward to the new year with you.